Hello, everyone. Today, we discuss a passage that has been asked in CAT 2023 Slot 3 paper. It is The Nutmeg Curse, a book written by Amitav Ghosh. The RC passage that occurred and the questions have been pasted as a link in the description box for all of you to read and answer the questions before you go ahead with watching the video and its solutions. Okay, so let's begin. The passage here primarily talks in terms of the biggest challenge. Now, what are the keywords that we have to look at while we are reading the passage? The biggest challenge that the Nutmeg Curse throws down is a prevailing understanding of when the climate crisis started. So, the Nutmeg Curse is throwing a challenge to our prevalent understanding when the climate crisis started. Most of us believe that it was with the widespread use of coal at the beginning of the industrial age in the 18th century and worsened with the mass adoption of oil and natural gas in the 20th. Now, the date primarily is the challenge as to when the climate crisis started. All of us have believed it was with the beginning of the industrial age in the 18th century and worsened with the mass adoption of oil and natural gas in the 20th. Ghosh takes the history. Now, this is possibly the most important point while we are answering the passage. Ghosh takes the history back at least 3 centuries. To start with the European colonialism in the 15th century. So our prevalent understanding, 18th century, Ghosh takes us 3 centuries back, 15th century. Okay? As to when the climate crisis started. He starts the book with a 1621 massacre by Dutch invaders determined to impose a monopoly on nutmeg cultivation. For those of you who are unaware of nutmeg, nutmeg is a spice. Okay? Nutmeg powder is normally used as a spice in a lot of culinary dishes that we prepare and trade in the Banda Islands in today's Indonesia. Now, not only do the Dutch invaders systematically depopulate the islands through genocide is mass murder, they also try their best to bring nutmeg cultivation into plantation mode. Now, the very idea of plantation mode, when we are talking about, we are saying we are decimating the forests. We are practicing deforestation in order to bring plantation, active or mass plantation into the picture. That means deforestation. Okay, that means destroying the environment. So previous, when we are looking at the native civilizations, they used to do nutmeg cultivation in patches for themselves. They did not destroy the forest. Now, with the Dutch invaders looking at it as something to export from these islands, they are practicing something, they're cutting down the trees, deforestation. So bring it into plantation mode. There are 2 points to which Ghosh returns through the examples from around the world. How the European colonists decimated not only the indigenous populations, decimate is to destroy, but also indigenous understanding of the relationship between humans and earth. Natives did not destroy the forest. They lived in harmony with the forests. The Europeans, the Dutch invaders here specifically, are destroying the forest. As a result, an indigenous understanding of the relationship between man and nature is coming into question. 2, how this was not an invasion only of humans, but on Earth itself. Earth could be looked at as a resource to exploit. Okay? Now, let's move down to the next paragraph. We know we are facing more frequent and more severe heat waves, storms, floods, droughts, wildfires due to climate change. We know our expansion through deforestation, dam building, canal cutting, in short, terraforming, giving the earth a particular form or shape. The word Ghosh uses has brought us repeated disasters. We are facing heat waves, storms, droughts. We are expanding and we are facing severe natural disasters. Are these the responses of an angry Gaia? Now, Gaia here refers to primarily the Earth Mother. Is Mother Earth angry? And is she manifesting her anger in the forms of heat waves, storms, floods, droughts, wildfires on these people who are looking at Earth as a resource to exploit, who has finally had enough. By using the word curse in the title, the author makes it clear he thinks so. I use the pronoun who knowingly because Ghosh has quoted many non-European sources so that he can question the prevalent way of looking at the earth as an inert object to be exploited to the maximum. Because Ghosh has quoted many non-European sources to inquire into the relationship between humans and the world around them so that he can question the prevalent way. So by him quoting the non-European sources, what is he trying to suggest is non-Europeans consider Earth not as an inert object. Because we are looking at the word, he questions the prevalent way. So non-Europeans do not look at the Earth as a resource to exploit, as we will read further in the passage. As Ghosh text quotes, notes, and bibliography show once more, none of this is new. There have always been challenges to the way European colonists looked at Earth and other civilizations. Okay, so they have always looked at, the European colonists have always looked at the Earth and other civilizations as a resource to exploit, rather than thinking of them as people or Earth as mother. Fine. There are other points of view that we can hear today if we listen hard enough. Those observing global climate change negotiations know about Latin American way of looking at Earth as Panchamma. Panchamma, Mother Earth. The Latin American way of looking at Earth. They also know how such framing is just provided lip service and ignored in major portions of the negotiations. The Nutmeg's curse, Ghosh explains why. Why? Earth as a resource to exploit. He shows the extent the vested interests in the oil economy. If I don't dig, I'll not be able to bring oil to the world and not revenues for my country. So do I need to exploit the earth? The answer is yes. Not only for oil exporting countries, but also for a superpower like US, oil drilling, oil prices, and oil movements around the world. Oil comes with power. And for power, I need to dig, I need to exploit the earth. Many of us know power utilities are sabotaging decentralized solar power generations today. Solar power generation sabotaged, that means we need to be ever increasingly dependent on coal and oil as fuel. Okay, so this is primarily the passage about, he primarily in the passage is talking in terms of our prevalent understanding of when the climate change started is with the beginning of industrialization in the early 18th centuries. But he takes the date back to the 15th centuries when Dutch invaders invaded the Banda Islands and tried to bring nutmeg cultivation into plantation mode. It was then when earth as a resource started being exploited for material gains of the European colonists. That is the primary idea in the passage talks. Let's look at the questions. Okay. On the basis of information in the passage, which one of the following is not a reason for the failure of policies seeking to address climate change? Not a reason. Now, when we are coming across these words, not a reason for the failure of policies. Okay, the global dominance of oil mentioned in the last paragraph is a reason for the failure of policies addressing climate change. Yes, the marginalized status. If we look at the word lip service somewhere in the last paragraph, okay, because they are not included in major substantiation discussions. The greed of organizations, again, the last paragraph. Okay, the fourth one, the decentralized characteristic of the renewable energy sources like solar power. This is not a reason for this, primarily the sabotaging of the decentralized characteristic of renewable power sources. That is the reason behind the failure. That is one of the reasons for the failure of policies. Okay, not the decentralized characteristic of the renewable power sources. So fourth one would be the correct answer. Okay, let's move further. All the following can be inferred from the reviewer's discussion of the Nutmeg's curse, except. All can be inferred except. So let's look at the first one. Environmental preservation policy makers can learn a lot from non-European sources, because he says they quote many non-European sources so that he can question the prevalent way. More importantly, Latin America, considering of Earth as Earth Mother. So can they learn? Yes. Academic discourses have always served as a function of, we're not talking in terms of academic discourses anywhere in the passage. So possibly this is the answer. Let's look at the rest. The contemporary dominant perception of nature and the environment was put in place by the process of colonialism. Earth as an inert object, Earth has a resource to exploit. Yes, this is also mentioned. The history of climate change is deeply intertwined with the history of colonialism. He takes it 3 centuries back to challenge our current understanding of when the climate crisis started. Okay, so this also can be inferred from the passage. So the correct answer would be option 2. Let's look at the next one. Which one of the following, if true, would make the reviewer's choice of the pronoun who for Gaia inappropriate? Now, when we get this kind of a question, we need to pick up where the word who has been used in the passage. Okay, now let's look at this one. I use the pronoun who knowingly because Ghosh has quoted many non-European sources to inquire into the relationship between humans and the world around them, so that he can question the prevalent way of looking at Earth as an inert object. So that he can question the prevalent way. Question the prevalent way means here, many non-European sources he has quoted in order to showcase that the non-Europeans, they consider Earth as mother. Now, which of the following, if true, would make the reviewer's choice of the pronoun who for Gaia inappropriate? Look at this word. That means Ghosh's reasoning or Ghosh's understanding is false or inappropriate. Okay? Or the reviewer's reasoning is inappropriate here. Okay? Now, if I look at, there is a direct cause-effect relationship between human activities and global climate change. This has nothing to do with the word who, so we can eliminate this. Modern Western science discovers new evidence of Earth being an inanimate object. No. Now, with the word who, we are talking also in terms of non-European sources. So can I have an answer close to that? Look at option 3. Non-European societies have perceived the Earth as a non-living source of all resources. Now, he has used non-European societies as evidence to question the prevalent way. If the non-European societies themselves consider Earth as an inanimate object, then Ghosh's reasoning is false or void. There, I cannot, if it is an inanimate object, I cannot use who. Okay? Let's look at the next one. Which one of the following best explains the primary purpose of the discussion of colonialism of the Banda Islands in the Nutmeg curse? Now, what is the primary purpose of discussion? Now, based on our understanding of the passage, the primary purpose of discussion is to put the date of climate change. How did it start? When did it start? 3 centuries back to the process of colonialism. Okay, so we are talking in terms of climate change, colonialism, and how the prevalent understanding of the beginning of the industrial age has to be shifted 3 centuries. Okay, now let's look at the options. To illustrate the role played by cultivation of certain crops in the plantation mode and contributing to climate change, this does not speak in terms of colonialism. So this cannot be an answer. To illustrate how systematic violence around the colonized contributed to the cornerstone, this is not speaking in terms of climate change. This cannot also be there. Third one, to illustrate how colonialism represented and perpetuated the mindset that has led to climate change. Yes, because it is talking in terms of the 2 keywords that are there in the passage, colonialism and climate change. The fourth option, if we look across, to illustrate the first instance. Is it the first instance? Not necessarily. This option can also be eliminated. So, CAT 2023, slot 3, VRC passage. These would be the kind of passages that you can expect. Have a thorough understanding of the passage. Read the first paragraphs carefully. Okay? And then develop a mind map and a subsequent understanding of the passage and answer the questions. We'll be coming up with more passages. Would love to see you subscribe to the channel and watch the upcoming videos. Thank you. Have a good day.